Hello and welcome to How Not to Fuck It Up, the definitive guide to new business through other people's mistakes. With me, Hannah March, Chief Growth Officer of Fold7. Welcome to David Kean, who is with me on this very rainy, horrible Friday. So thank you for coming in to see me. But we have got a bit of beer, so hopefully that will see us through. David runs and is founder of a consultancy called Catalyst that helps businesses with their growth strategy and has been in the game for a long time. And
nicely put.
Please, very experienced. So please tell me a little bit about Catalyst and also about the journey that you have taken to get where you are today.
With pleasure. Well, thank you for having me, Hannah. It's very nice to be here. So Catalyst is a company that's been going since about 2018. It's a consultancy firm that specialises in helping particularly professional services organisations with strategic growth. So helping them with their narrative, helping them with their capabilities, helping them make sure they're all aligned around what they're trying to achieve and where they're aiming. And we tend to help them with what I would call their shopfront window. So the way they convey themselves to their publics, whether it's investors, whether it's clients, whether it's their peers in the industry, etc. And my particular shtick is anything to do with sales, pitching, negotiation, that kind of stuff. So where they're having high stakes conversations and the outcome really matters to them, that's where I tend to come in and help them, point them at the right answer. So that's what I do. How did I get into it? Well, when I started out, like a lot of people, I was looking after client business. I worked for ad agencies and very quickly realised that going round the mill and creating ads every year wasn't my thing. I love creative work, but the thing I really got a buzz out of was new business. And back then, believe it or not, it was regarded as ungentlemanly to go and chase other people's business or approach clients to
Still is by some.
do that. Yeah. And, well, maybe so, yeah. And I thought that, well, actually, no, that's a very good idea, because otherwise you're reliant on who shows up on your front door to who you work with. And I thought, well, we don't want to do that. We don't want to wait passively. We want to go out and find the people we want to work with. So I made a presentation to the boss of the agency. At the end of my 14 minutes that I was allotted, there was a big exhalation of cigar smoke. You were allowed to smoke in those days inside. And he just said, how vulgar. And amazingly, a month later, the agency I worked at, owned by him, was closed down. It went bankrupt. And I took a lesson out of that, which is actually I was right and he was wrong. So I've always loved new business. I've always loved pitching, the drama of it, etc. I really admire people who avoid pitches because they talk it in, and that's really what very good new business is all about. But I do like the drama, and that's what I've sort of made a career on, and that's why I'm here.
And help others navigate the world of pitching as well.
Yes, that's the idea. Yeah, and hopefully turn a shilling by doing so.
Yes, and we'll talk about your book later as
Terrific.
Well. To start, I would like to know a little bit about David growing up. So we always introduce our guests by getting to know them a little bit, and it helps us to understand how that might have influenced how they are in the world, where they got to, and the way that they approach things. So can you tell me a little bit about David Kean as a child and your family life?
You certainly can. Get ready for this.
Yes.
It's a slightly unusual story, but basically, when I was 18 months old, I was kidnapped and I was held a hostage for 1 year.
Wow.
And at the age of 6, I survived an assassination attempt. Now, no, I wasn't a member of a Colombian cartel. I wasn't in a sort of nasty war zone. I was simply a pawn in an extremely hostile divorce case. And I was being used as a bargaining chip for custody battles and things like that. And so I lived with the consequences of this for a very long time, as did all my siblings and the families, and there was a huge fallout, as you can imagine. And it made me realise what can happen if in high-stakes conversations, like a divorce settlement, it goes out of control. And if people don't know how to find resolution, they don't know how to find some sort of way forward. And emotions get very high and people's egos get in the way. And as a consequence, people genuinely suffer. And I did suffer. So that sort of propelled me into, I'm very interested in communication. I've seen what happens when it doesn't work. And so it's been quite a good way of informing why I'm so interested in it and trying to help people get resolutions that maybe they wouldn't get without a little bit of outside help. And I wish the parties in that particular divorce negotiation had a bit of outside help rather than adversarial lawyers, etc., ratcheting the whole pressure up. So that was a very cataclysmic start in life. For a long time, I sort of suffered from the belief that I wasn't supposed to be here because I was actually the product of an affair. And then luckily I turned the corner on that and I thought, actually, no, I was very deliberately brought into the world. It's just they didn't handle it terribly well. So once you turn that corner, then everything becomes fantastic. So I've kind of got through that now. There was a lot of fallout, a lot of talking to the parents and all that stuff. But yeah, it helped.
Wow. And you talked about how it influenced your attitude to conflict resolution and navigating high-stakes conversations. Was there anything else about how you grew up or your personality at the time that you think has set you in good stead for new business in general and those types of situations?
Yeah, I think my outlet when I was younger, I used to dress up. I loved dressing up as, I don't know, cavaliers and roundheads or historical figures or...
The performance.
Yeah, performance.
Yeah.
And I love a stage.
Yeah.
And that's been my outlet, I think. You know, I am never more alive than when on a stage. So I love in real life events. I like treading the boards. I used to do plays at school and things like that. So I've always gravitated towards that. And that's my way maybe of acting it out. And of course, when you are in business development, then there is a time when you probably have to perform. And the show and what goes on around the show and actually delivering the show, which is a big part of pitching. It's not by any means all of it, but it's a very important part. And I've always studied those that are very good at it. I've seen lots of them and I enjoy it too. So I think from that point of view, there's been a great benefit. And, you know, advertising found me. I didn't find it, like a lot of people. And it was a wonderful community. And I just felt instantly at home because I'm around people who like creativity, who are a bit imaginative, who I've always thought advertising and related industries are kind of the light entertainment of the business world.
Yeah.
There's very heavy lifting in the city and all that. But the people there are phenomenally bright, you know, just really fun, nice personalities and incredibly inventive. And to be around that is a real, I'm at home.
It's funny, the performance thing, because I would say most people that I've had in here doing this interview have said that they did some type of performance or theatre or something when they were children that they really loved. And I find that quite interesting because it's not just about being extroverted necessarily, but it's about understanding how to connect with someone when you're standing up, when you're the one communicating, and it's not necessarily a two-way thing. And that's interesting in the world of pitches because that is what you're doing. You're standing up and communicating with someone who's not necessarily, it's not a conversation.
Yeah.
It's a different
thing.
God,
I'm a cliche. We're all sort of frustrated thesps. But I think, yes, that's true to an extent, I think. But also, the other side of pitching is being able to hear.
Totally.
You know, and so, yes, that you know, it can be awful if somebody's just in transmit.
Yeah.
But yes, I think it's a very important component that you can light up a room and you can make people go, I want to go there with you because I kind of buy that.
To inspire people.
Yeah, and have the conviction behind what you're saying that people feel that that's something they want to be part of.
So if we're going to talk about the broad topic of making mistakes and failing, let's start with a biggie, which is what is the biggest mistake you think you ever made and how did you deal with it and what did you learn
in
from
work
it?
Or in life?
Let's go both.
Okay. All right. In life, I think I got to a place where I was doing pretty well in my career, but I took my family and I went down to live in Cornwall, very deliberately, a long way away. And that exposed problems in my marriage, my first marriage. And I tried to make that work, and I tried to cling on to it for too long. They say fail fast. I didn't. I sort of dragged it out and tried to make it work. And then on top of the workload and everything else, it became too much, and I burnt out. And I had a few other things, like one of my partners died, very sadly, my business partners.
Sorry.
So I went, you know what? I can't do this anymore. So I took myself off at the age of 49 to work a ski season. I put myself on a ski instructor course, and then I retrained as a chef.
Wow.
And only 2 weeks, but enough.
Yeah.
And I became a chalet chef for a season, working with 24-year-olds who were brilliant. Absolutely amazing. Loved it, skied 100 days, and then came back to my business partner and said, do you mind if I do it again? So I went the next season as well. And that was amazing. It was a huge tonic and just what I wanted. So, and I was putting dinner on the table, 3-course meal every night, 10 guests.
Healing.
And it was,
well.
And then I didn't have to worry about anything else. There was no work to take home because the work was on the table.
Yeah.
And it was very cathartic.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it was. It was good fun. I smile remembering it. It's good.
And how about in work life?
Work mistakes. Back yourself. Like a lot of people. I mean, David Ogilvy, I think, started his business at the age of 43. I was about the same when I started mine. Not quite as successful as David Ogilvy. I don't yet have a chateau. But I should have backed myself earlier. I was working in Omnicom, and I'd been doing the same job for about 6-7 years. I think if I'd have left 4 years earlier, I was just going around the hoops doing the same thing.
Yeah.
If I'd have left earlier and had the confidence to do that, I should have done that.
If we think about what the common mistakes are made in growth roles and maybe in pitching, what would you say are the most common mistakes made? And you can use some of your own experience or what you've witnessed.
Yeah.
Maybe when you went into Ogilvy and saw what they were doing wrong, what do you think are really common mistakes that you've seen a lot?
The weird thing about pitching and new business is everybody knows how they should do it. Because it's common sense.
Yeah.
Do you want people talking at you ad infinitum about them? No. You want to know what they can do for you. Do agencies do that? No. They talk about themselves. Should you devote all your time and energy to winning this pitch? Yes, of course you should. But so should you get distracted by other things? No, you shouldn't. Do you? Yes, of course you do. So basically, I think the main problem that people have is it's a bit like if you were running against Usain Bolt in the 100 metres final of the Olympics, which is what a pitch is. There's a beginning, there's an end, and there's a lot of frenetic activity in between. If you're running against a competitor like that, and that you hear the starter pistol, and that starts the race, you do not stay on the blocks for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and give everybody a head start. Because you're never going to win. You can never make up that lost ground.
Yeah.
I mean, Usain Bolt, maybe he could, but if you're that good, fair dues to you, but most aren't. And so they do that. So they don't start straight away. They're not geared up to start straight away. They do everything they possibly can to get in the way of winning, even though they all know that it's about winning and they say they want to win.
Yeah.
So that
and you know what it takes to win because everybody's won a pitch,
yes,
right?
Yes. And yet they do everything that gets in the way of doing that. So in a way, what I do as a pitch doctor is I stop them getting in the way of themselves, because you need somebody who says, no, you're not doing that, all right? We need to focus on this. And if you've got very bright people, you point them in the right direction and you make sure that at certain stages you're not still tinkering with things. You know what you're presenting, you know what you're trying to do, you know what the client needs, and you've done all the things that incrementally pull you ahead of the competition at every interaction with the client over that period, you will win. It becomes almost inevitable. But too many people don't have that discipline, and they think, oh, I'll be brilliant on the day, or they tinker with the creative or whatever it is until the very last moment, and then they end up with a client who they present to, and the client hasn't got a clue what they're talking about or what you're asking them to buy. So you end up with these very standard pitches, and a big surprise, you get a phone call saying, I'm terribly sorry, you've come a very close second. No, you haven't come a close second, you lost.
Yes.
And losing hurts.
And how would you deal with, as a pitch doctor, how would you deal with, in a smaller business, for example, if there is, resource is a problem. Everybody wants to pitch for a piece of business, but resource is tough. Let's say if there's 2 or 3 weeks to go, they may not be starting immediately. Obviously, I completely agree that you should be off the blocks, like straight into it. How would you navigate that with an agency?
It's a blessing to have less resource. I've worked for bootstrapped agencies starting out where they've rented an office to make the client believe that, we're pucker. You become more inventive with less resource. If you mean less time resource, particularly, because everyone's running around covering the bases of clients and everything, and you're trying to do this, the discipline then is... I'll give you an example, if I may.
Yeah, great.
Right. So I used to work for an agency which had seen better times. We were the new management team that had come in, and our show reel, although brilliant, the last thing on it was done at least 6 years ago. Okay? So, and we were bootstrapped. So we had people coming in, and we had a client who came in, and they put us on the list, and we had an honest conversation with them. We said, what on earth have you put us on the list for? Our work is 6 years old, and we're a new team, we're untried, we're untested. And the guy said, we hear you're very dynamic. And so that we took as our brief. The pitch was for 2 weeks. We were down in their offices, which were down in Poole in Dorset, 13 days out of the next 14. Now, could we afford the time? No, we had clients to run and everything else, but we did it.
Yeah.
And we had new ideas every time we went down there. We were already working with them by the time we pitched.
Yeah.
Whereas the other lot, they got the brief, and 14 days later they showed up to do the dog and pony show, and they didn't win. Of course not. We were already there. So we were showing dynamism, which is what they said they wanted. So we lived that. And that was really just the will of the CEO and the business development people going down there with a creative person day after day saying, we heard you, you said this, what do you think about that?
Got it. So it's not necessarily the whole team, but it's like find some key people to go and be present.
They buy people, don't they? They're going to buy 1 or 2 people. I had another one, the only time it's ever happened, and it's in the book, it's the beginning of the book, when we had we were invited to go and see a brand that nobody had ever heard of called Nicorette. And 3 of us, the international MD, me and a planner, or an account man who was a very good planner. We went to Copenhagen, we got in a helicopter, their company helicopter, they flew us to Helsingborg, where their HQ was. We had a 15-minute meeting with them. We told them that this is what you need to do in the UK. The planner was brilliant, and you could see that he had them in the palm of his hand. At the end of the meeting, they had a little conflab, and they said, we want to work with you. How much is it going to cost? So planner and I left the room so that the MD could have the commercials. He came out with a big smile on his face. We got in the helicopter, and he said, £250,000. And we flew off, full of joy, and the planner said, David, I don't know why you make such a fuss about pitches. They're easy. And it's like, God, I could have killed him. But it was an easy, it was. So it can happen. You can talk it in, like I was saying, but it's, you just have to be disciplined. And if you really run out of time, use the time to rehearse, not to finesse the creative work, because then you'll look like a team.
I agree with this. Have you ever had to encourage anyone to rehearse who's not a fan of rehearsing?
I don't know anyone who's a fan of rehearsing. If you found one, I'd love to meet them. It's normally you drag them kicking and screaming, and normally you get them in the room, and then what they say is they editorialise. So they say, I'm going to say something like this, and the discipline, And the reason they don't like me is because I say, no, I don't want to hear what you think you're going to say. I want to hear you say it. And if you make people say it, they won't thank you. We've had tears. It's very high drama. People feel vulnerable.
Oh, wow.
You do all of that. But when they come through it, and you do, because you can put your arm around them as well, it's a very team process. But when they come through the other end and they put on a show, and in that particular instance, we made the clients cry with the story we told at the beginning of the pitch about what their product means to people who live in villages in Indonesia who get malaria problems. And the clients were crying, then you know where you're going with this. So is it worth it? Yes. But if people hate it and they kick against it, and a lot of chief executives and chairmen say, oh, I don't need to rehearse. Yes, you do. If you're not going to rehearse, you're not in the pitch. It's just simple as that.
David, what is your take on making and handling mistakes? What's your ethos when it comes to failing? Like, you mentioned earlier something about failing fast. Do you think that is what you should do? Or is there some other ethos that you live by when it comes to making mistakes? Are you very comfortable with it? Do you try and avoid it?
I don't think anybody's comfortable with making mistakes. Everybody feels like, oh, idiot. I've heard a couple of good strategies for coping with it.
Great, hit me with them.
I think I heard one recently, actually, which is when certain very high-performing, like military or like people in the special forces, if something goes wrong, if they fuck up, then one of the ways of coping with that is to say data received. It's just data, and it's not personal, it's data, okay? And in their case, it'd be in extremis, so lives might have been lost. I remember seeing a guy from the Red Arrows, when they're in formation, their wingtips are 9 inches apart, and they're going at 450 miles an hour. The only reason they can do that is because after every training flight, when they're learning the routines and everything, they come down and they debrief. And they debrief not by being personal, but by referring to the aeroplane, not the pilot.
Right.
So they called it Red Arrow 4. You were adrift. You were at least 11 inches and you should have been 9. So what we need to do is just go up there and try that again. So debriefing is brilliant. And if you watch top athletes when they're on press conference, so if you watch Nadal or people like that, when they came off court and they'd lost, didn't happen a lot, but when they did lose, and they were asked, how do you feel about that? They talk about themselves as performance on court. My backhand wasn't performing as it should have done. I need to work on that. Yeah. So I think it's kind of, if you can treat it, try and take the ego out and treat it as data and think of it's only about the performance, that's all that matters, then it's that stuff about what makes the boat go faster.
Yes.
And it's not ego.
Yeah.
And then if you do it like that, I think you've got a fighting chance of not internalising it and thinking, oh, I'm terrible, an awful human being, which is the shortest way to, sabotage yourself.
Would you advocate then for everybody does a wash-up after a pitch, mostly when you know whether or not you've won or lost. Would you advocate doing a debrief immediately after that? Obviously, everyone has a chat about the pitch, how they think it went, but would you suggest a kind of slightly different approach where you're doing some sort of debrief and everyone talks about what they think of the performance? Yeah,
I mean, we talk about this in the book. I think you debrief, you have quite a lot of opportunity with clients to be with them. So there might be a chemistry meeting, there might be an interim meeting, there might be a tissue session, there might be so even before you get to the final presentation, there will be exposure to clients, even if it's just one-on-ones or whatever, or just a small little meeting. What we used to do when I was pitch doctoring or when I was in agency land is in the taxi on the way back from the meeting or wherever we were, we'd immediately debrief.
Yes.
And that I think is good because it's in the moment. So, and it's a terrible sin to be polite and just go, oh, no, you were amazing. Oh, you were amazing too. And that's useless, So Sophie Devonshire at the Marketing Society, who I used to work with in one of the companies that we founded, she and I used to do this all the time. So what worked and what could have been better.
Yeah.
And every time we did a workshop or whatever, then we would do that, and it just helps polish the performance, make sure that you do. And I think particularly people who are starting their careers really appreciate it because they can get better then. And isn't that what we all want to do, is get better?
I think there's an importance as well in doing the in-person debrief, but also having a space for anonymous debriefing. So what we do at Fold 7 is after pitches, we obviously all chat about how we think it went, but we also do an anonymous wash-up. So there's 2 meetings immediately after to talk about it. Anonymous wash-up, so that people can chat about what they think went well. There's 3 questions: what went well, what didn't go well, how much chemistry you thought the team had with each other, not necessarily with the clients.
No, really important.
With each
Absolutely,
other, because it's important to get a real feel for that. And what I find is that it's an anonymous survey, so you don't know who's answering. You always get more detailed information in the anonymous survey.
Yeah,
for that reason, about people feel everyone always wants to be polite. We're British. And also, you've done a pitch together. Everyone's worked really hard. And I think there's also the feeling that you don't want to put a downer on anyone. If that, you want to build each other up and make each other feel good about all the time you spent together and all the hard work you've done. So I think the anonymousness really helps us certainly learn from things that perhaps wouldn't have been tabled otherwise.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's good to hear that you do that. I think most companies don't. They bumble into the next meeting and there's no learning. It's also, I think, a very good idea that maybe when you know the result, good or bad, you send a third party in to talk to the client, because they have no axe to grind.
Yes.
They're not defensive. They're just interested in what worked, what did not work, how did we come across, what did you like, what maybe raise questions. And you can also get some intelligence about the competition, which never hurts.
There are obviously lots of tried and tested ways to get pitching and new business and growth right, some of which we've talked about. But then there's also a lot of new tech tools coming into the world that influence then how we do things. And on that note, how much do you experiment, and what's the biggest kind of new bet that you've made that perhaps hasn't paid off or didn't pay off?
I'm going to avoid that question. I will partially answer it. Actually, it's quite timely at the moment, because obviously they've just announced that DDB is no longer. And Bill Bernbach, who's obviously, a very wise guru, etc., said, we're always obsessed with the new. And he said, what I'm interested in is unchanging man, or mankind, or humankind, not changing. One, we should be very careful about, if we just got the basics right when we pitch, which most people don't.
Yeah.
For all the things we've been talking about, they run out of time, they don't organise themselves properly, they don't rehearse, etc. If we just got that right, that'd be a good start. But we don't. So if you're beyond that stage and you do get those things right, then what do you do? Well, AI and everything else is, brilliant. I have nothing against it. The problem is, pitches are about making promises about where you're going with another human being, or not with an organisation. You're not pitching to an organisation, you're pitching to humans. And the ones that win communicate and connect at a human level. They're the ones where you go, I want you. You get me, I get you. It's fantastic. You get each other, as you were saying about your team. Do we come over as a team? So those are the things you need to focus on when you're trying to win business.
If we start to talk about the kind of nuts and bolts of the role, and there's a couple of topics that maybe we could cover, and perhaps we start with pipeline building through the lens of what are the biggest mistakes that people make, or what are the kind of common pitfalls of pipeline building do you think that people should avoid?
I think rule 1, have one. Have a pipeline.
And what if you don't have one?
If you don't have one, get one. Make one up. If you get all the way back to David Ogilvy on advertising, I mean, he was talking about, he wrote down 5 clients he wanted, and a few years later he had all 5. That's the most basic one. I've been into companies or agencies or professional advisory companies that have been bought by private equity. And private equity is a scary thing because private equity come in and say, right, we want you to quadruple your growth in the next 2-3 years. And then suddenly the people who have sold or got the investment go, but we're only growing at 10% a year. And it's all been passive. It's all come to us. Now we've got to go and find it. And you've got a private equity breathing down your neck saying, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? So quite a lot of the conversations I have with companies is configuring themselves to set up for doing business development in a systematic, methodical way. And so you need, at base level, there's a lot of tools out there, but really what you need a wish list.
Yes.
Who do we want to work for? We need to know why we want to work with them and why we think we can help them. And the sorts of companies that we're good at helping, and then finding other companies that are like that. So you have your bullseye, and then you have your ones around it, and you go from there. And then you have an intentional. My big frustration is people only turn on the new business pipeline when they have a new business need, and they go,
it's too late.
We're not going to make our
It's
our
too late
figures."
then.
It's too late.
Yeah.
There's a brilliant piece of advice from, I think it's Gareth Mercer, who is Pablo. But I remember seeing him on a panel, and he was asked that question: what should you do if you're trying to get to clients and you're a new business person? And he said, be a friend when you don't have to be. And this is to the absolute core of the philosophy of what we talk about, which is stop selling, start helping. You're there for their needs, not your own. And people forget that.
And anything else, any other kind of common mistakes or things that you see people always getting wrong when it comes to pipeline building?
They buy a CRM system. And they go,
don't use it properly.
Job done. Okay, we've got a CRM system. That's sorted everything now. And you just go, oh, really? Again? So there's a lack of that. There'll be an initiative that will start it all, and everyone will get very excited about it, and then the day job will take over, and you go back in a few months' time, and you say, what happened to all of that, and how have you done on this? And there's just a loss of momentum.
Yeah.
And stuff gets in the way. So you understand that people have other things they need to do. I get that. But that is the job. Somebody on the board has to say, no, this is really important.
I was literally just about to say that same thing about what the process, like it has to be led from the top.
Yeah.
Especially, and it might seem to some like that's not the job of the leadership team for these types of things. So I actually think it very much is, especially when you're trying to make systemic change for things like CRM system or any kind of process changes, operational changes.
Yeah.
It has to come from the top, like that this is
Always.
enforced, that everybody is doing it this way from now on.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, nobody will do it.
And if the top tier is not doing it, like then it's...
an example of that, quite a lot of what we do is we're brought in not just to pitch doctor things, but also to help try and help people with the capability level around business development. And the companies that are going to take this to heart and are going to make it work because the leadership team are in it and they stay in it. The ones that don't, they come in at the beginning and they go, this is David, all right? You need to listen to David. He's going to be really good on business development. He's going to make you all very good. Sadly, I can't be in this session because, and you just know at that time, it's not going to transplant because you haven't got it, and you don't think it's your responsibility. And so what they do is they delegate it to either everyone else, or they have somebody they call a new business person, who's really a filing clerk, who does the admin and doesn't meet clients and whatever, and is probably very good at it. But it's not in the DNA, it's not in the blood. And
but also it's just not the same. Like, you can't have anyone who's not the founder or the MD or that level. Anyone who's at that level is not going to tell the whole of the rest of the agency how to behave and like do things and change, Mr. Account Handler, you change the way that you do that. It's just not going to work unless
it's not. It's not.
Unless it's the top
It's got
people.
to come from the top. That's when it works. And if it doesn't work like that, it's much more difficult.
Yeah. I feel that. And then let's move on to pitching. And I have here your most recent book, which is called The Work Smarter Guide to Pitching. I have to admit that I have not yet read this, but I'm very much looking forward to doing so.
Excellent.
And so because I have not read it, and everyone should get hold of a copy, could you give me...
You want me to praise it for you?
Yeah. How much time have we got?
Well, we wrote it like it is in the Work Smarter series because the whole point of them is that it's a ready reference. So it's got checklists in it. So it's very practical. So it's designed to help people through the whole thing. So the philosophy we've got behind it is very simple, which is everyone thinks pitching, that's the presentation.
Yes.
No, it's not. So we've got a kind of sequential journey that you need to go through, which will give you, I talked earlier about how you incrementally pull ahead of the competition at every stage. So the first thing is don't fuck up, all right? Don't do the stupid mistakes, simple mistakes that you kick yourself for because they actually erect barriers and get in the way.
Like not starting immediately, like...
Things like that. So don't get in the way of yourself to start with. Don't make life hard, harder than it already is, because it's already hard. So there's the pre-pitch. Then there's the people. Get the right people.
Yeah.
Not who's available, but who's right casting. We do a lot of work on personality profiling and matching people and making sure that you hedge your bets in case the client likes that or they're particularly like this.
When you say sorry to interrupt you, David. When you say personality profiling, talk to me a little bit about that. So that I'm assuming that that is to do with matching your people to the client people and who you think they will like based on looking at what they've written in the past or looking at what you think they're interested in or the way that they talk or whatever you can get. Yeah. But also, is it about personality profiling the individuals together who you're putting together? It
is, yeah, because there are we use a particular model where it divides the world into 4 basic types. The truth of the matter is that if you're a particular type, that means 3/4 of the planet isn't like you, and that can cause problems. So you need to understand that you communicate and you like information in a particular way, and of course that's going to be true for the people on the other side of the table, if it's an investor or if it's a client or whatever. So you need to be able to, spot what they're like. So if they're very logical and they want a very sequential stepping stone argument, there's no point going in there full of lots of fireworks and all that stuff because they just won't buy that. But equally, you might have somebody who's very about action. There might be another person who's about the consensus of the team. There might be another person who wants the logical argument. Somebody else who's really good at inspiration. You need all of those, And when I go to a meeting with a client or somebody that I'm, pitching to or whatever, I'll go with a partner who is not like me. And the reason for that is if they don't like me, they might like them. Yeah. So you just, and also diversity of teams, as we were talking about earlier, you get richer content if everybody can look at things in a different way. Yeah. So we do a lot of that, and we think very carefully about who are the right people to put on this pitch that will get the best fit with the client and with each other. Because as you say, the client's looking at you thinking, do you get on? And you've got to have that. So it's not just about experience or capability, it's about chemistry. Yes. So the people, and then of course you've got a whole series of things. They all happen to be P's because we just found that it helps people remember. Yeah, so it's things like promise. Because pitching is really, a marriage proposal is a pitch. You are asking somebody to look into the future and spend and invest all their time as your partner. So you're painting a promise of where you're going together. You're not trying to hoodwink them. You're not trying to, bamboozle them. This is a journey you're going on together, and you've got to get on. You've got to really get on. So the promise, what's the promise that you're making to them? And then there's the problem. How do you solve the problem quicker? Because you haven't got very long. Yeah. So what are quick ways to get to the heart of the problem, and how can you then bring that alive? And what do you do with it? Profit. So how are you going to make profit out of this? You need to be running conversations about money and scope of work and everything else in parallel because you're a responsible commercial outfit. So you've got to be able to do that. And that's part of the pitch, is the way you conduct yourself in that parallel conversation. The process, it's no good not having a process because it'll just end up in tears. Then you get to the presentation and you've got to really, really take that seriously and be professional about that. And then, of course, you've made your presentation. The worst thing you can do is stop.
Yes.
Because that's when the clients are going, right, we've got to make a decision now. So that's often the last bit afterwards. It's that last bit as you go to the tape. You keep running. So what do you do in order to keep momentum and get things going and keep dialogue fresh with the client and try and be helpful, all that stuff, so that you're driving towards, you're not giving up. Yeah. I mean, a few of the pitches I've had, they've been long and very, very atrocious, very, very long, drawn out. And
Especially
it's
the
like
big
a
one.
marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the last people standing, but you've got to have the stamina for that. And you've got to have a plan for how you're going to do that and keep that dialogue going. And that means being fresh and all that sort of stuff. So that's what the book does. It takes you by the hand and it leads you through that entire thing. And it's easy to implement. I've always maintained it's easier to win a pitch than to lose a pitch if you do this. But most people don't do it.
Well, so just for everyone's benefit who's listening, it's called The Work Smarter Guide to Pitching by David Kean and Tanya Kandarova.
Correct. Thank you.
You can get it on Amazon. Yeah, there we go. I have a final question for you, and that is, what do you think is most different about pitching now than when you first started out?
I think it's gone full circle. When you've been around a few times, you start to see, oh, that's coming around again. Like clients put stuff up for pitch every 5 years and everyone gets really excited. It's like, well, I've done this 4 times, this client. So I don't mean to sound jaundiced at all, because they're always exciting, because there are always new challenges and everything else. But you have to remember that the very first agency I worked for was run by somebody who was an actor.
Yeah.
All right? And their pitches were world-renowned. The most famous pitches that have been done.
Yeah.
The old British Rail story that everyone, the apocryphal one that everyone's heard, that was them. And he was a thespian from Hull, and he was called Peter Marsh, and every single script, every pitch was scripted, and it was rehearsed, and it was done as a stage production. And there were films of the pitches, and they were done to a very high professional standard. And somewhere along the way, some agencies are very good at that. Sometimes you don't need all that theatrics, but the principle of being disciplined and being rehearsed and taking it very seriously, and putting on a show and doing everything that leads up to that show as a theatre would, I think is a good thing to do. So it's not the answer you probably wanted, that, it's all changed. And it has in lots of ways, of course. You have to do it online. It's using technology a lot more now. But as we talked about earlier, it's still about human connection. And human connection, when we all go to a theatre show, it's the best experience in the world, because you go to Moulin Rouge or you go to whatever and you are there, and it touches you and it makes you feel alive. And the great pitches have always done that, and if they happen to have some brilliant ideas along the way, that's pretty good too. So I don't think it's changed that much, because the audience hasn't changed, because the audience is still human beings. Yeah,
I agree. I think the fundamentals remain the same. It's how we do it has changed a little due to technology advances, etc., etc. Well, thank you so much, David. That was a really wonderful chat. And I look forward to talking more in the pub in about 10 minutes.
Hope so. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank you for watching or listening to How Not to Fuck It Up, the definitive guide to new business through other people's mistakes. Join me in our next episode when we will hear more mistakes from senior people in the industry.